Welcome to Friday 15 with Master B2B. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoar, my partner in this global intergalactic podcast scenario with people all over the galaxy listening. Right, Andy? Friday.
Great to be here, even all across the world and the galaxy, apparently.
The galaxy. I love saying that. It's fun. Anyway, folks, thanks for joining us today for another week of Friday 15. We're continuing kind of our topic all around AI and related stuff. So excited to get into the conversation today. Some cool, interesting facts we found, and want to share those in just a moment. But first, our breaking news. Andy, did you see this? Lowe's to buy foundation building materials for $8.8 billion to boost their contractor business. Well, this isn't too much of a shock, right? Home Depot has been doing this. So Lowe's and rival Home Depot are turning to deals to bolster their presence in the $250 billion professional builder market amid weak demand in the do-it-yourself category. Andy, this is a fascinating move. I mean, this is, it's fascinating about this is it's happening in retail sectors now, moving over to B2B. And we see it in solution providers too, seeing what all these companies making moves and investments in digital technologies and e-commerce on the B2B side. Now they're moving more into B2B. So this is sort of a trend that's happening everywhere because the opportunity remains huge on the B2B side and the market is underserved. As we see companies like Amazon Business and others taking share. Well, Lowe's, Home Depot, and others are not ignoring this trend. What do you make of this acquisition, Andy?
Let's see. It's a higher margin business with a longer and better customer lifetime value. What am I missing here? I just think a lot of these companies, look, I noticed a trend. Companies that start in B2C and go to B2B never go back to B2C. But companies that are B2B and they go to B2C always go back to B2B. So
right.
That should tell you a little something about this business. I don't know maybe it's just where you start. I don't know. I don't know what the reluctance is to go into B2B. I just said it. The higher margin, better long-term customer value. It used to be that it required a lot of hand-holding, maybe some domain expertise. But I actually am beginning to believe now that one of the reasons why B2C companies don't do this is simply because they think they need to stick to what they've always done. And at some point, when you look at a circumstance and say, wait a minute, this is a better business over here.
Yeah.
Why are we still over here? And so what eventually happens is I think some of these companies, they're going to have PE companies are going to come along and say, why are you wasting your time in the B2C market when you have this upside in the B2B market? Don't tell me this isn't actually happening right now.
Well, having lived in both, Andy, I was in B2C for 17, 18 years and now B2B for about 8 years now. There are fundamental differences in it really comes down to the customer and the timeline and really the connection to the customer. Because, B2B, you'll have $1 billion business in B2C with, 2 million customers. You'll have $1 billion business in B2B that'll have 50,000 customers. The time to close and develop the relationship with a B2B customer is much longer, but then when you have them, they're more loyal, higher margin, to your point. It's a different kind of DNA in each market, which is why I think you see, when a Home Depot or Lowe's or whoever moves into B2B, they're keeping a lot of that B2B DNA, kind of separate and intact because it is a different kind of go-to-market. The products are similar in some ways, the e-commerce capabilities are similar in some ways. But, there's this constant debate about B2B, B2C. Are they the same? Is this consumerization of B2B, blah, 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 blending? Yes, but I think there's a point at which there's still enough of a difference. But I'm with you, man. B2C, there's a huge opportunity both on the, retail brand side as well as on the solution side for these companies to move over and serve these B2B buyers.
I find that companies are oftentimes running from something and not running to it. So they're running from B2C. Even that article, it said weak demand. It's like, Is that the reason why you're going to the higher margin, better lifetime value side of the business because of weak demand in the other market? I don't know. At some point, I'd say, who's managing these companies if that's the way they're thinking? Again, that's an attribution from the article. Maybe it's more complex than that, and perhaps it is, but I don't know. I always say B2B is hard to get into and hard to get out of.
Well, I
But
will
I
tell
think
you,
it's because people just aren't willing to invest the time and effort in getting the client. Because once you get the client, it might take a year to get them. They'll be with you for 10
I
versus a sugar
yes.
high in 2 weeks that leaves you 3 weeks later.
Well, that's the thing, Andy. I mean, that's why personally I prefer the B2B side, is because it takes more time to win the customer. But when you have them, if you're doing a good job as a business, they'll stay with you. It's not a fickle, what have you done for me lately? Consumer product where I can change. I'm looking for a new shirt because my other, the business didn't make me look cool. The product didn't make me look cool enough. What the heck does that mean? How do
Right.
you address that? Versus it helps me do my job better as a contractor. This product does. So, or the way I'm working with this distributor. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think, but that's the core one of the core differences too is B2C. I found always to be very reactive versus B2B, which is probably too, but much more planful. And they're very conservative in decision making. But anyway, let's get to our topic today. This is a great. We could do a whole Friday 15 just on that topic. We're going to talk today about why do 95% of AI projects fail. Andy, 95%. So MIT released this study lately. This was in Fortune this week. That said that 95% of generative AI pilots at companies are failing. They're failing to deliver measurable financial results with only a tiny fraction of initiatives scaling to production. And the study cited that the core reason for this is the Gen AI divide. It's not a lack of AI models, but there's a learning gap in how these companies integrate and adapt these tools to their specific workflows. A failure in proper targeted integration with the core business. Fascinating. So, again, doesn't like everything else in digital and e-commerce, it doesn't come down to the tools. The tools are there. It's how they're implemented, right, Andy? What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, you expect some failure rate, right? These are experiments, but
Right.
95%. I mean, we looked behind this study, and what it was is the MIT Media Lab um, spoke to a bunch of companies and sort of modeled what made for successful AI projects and what made for unsuccessful ones. And we'll walk through some of that here. But I think the big takeaway was, in fact, they even said this. Um, the Gen AI divide makes clear that the real barriers are not technical, they're strategic, organizational, and cultural.
Yeah.
That's the key here. It's operationalizing these things that's hard. I was
Yes.
listening to a podcast recently, and I thought it was fascinating. They're talking about the idea of genius and how people think about genius. And they said people think about it all wrong. The genius isn't really in the invention, it's the operationalizing of the invention. So Thomas Edison, for example, didn't invent the light bulb. Other people had that idea. He was the guy who figured out how to create the right kind of vacuum so that it worked. And his real genius was actually lighting New York City.
Right.
That was quite an undertaking. It wasn't inventing the light bulb, but nobody goes around saying, wow, we want to thank Thomas Edison for lighting New York City.
Right.
So
Interesting.
that's the hard work. Elon Musk, love him or hate him, he didn't invent the electric car, but he did find a way to mass produce electric cars. That was the genius. It was in operationalizing the idea. And that's where AI, I think, is treated a bit like a genius idea, but it has
Mhm.
to be a genius operization. Is that a word? Or operization?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
We have
Yes,
to
we
figure out what
get
that word is, but that's
it.
what it has to be. It's like you have
Yeah,
to take the AI capabilities and you have to turn it into something that changes the way you work. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a moment.
yeah. So let's dig into why these AI initiatives. What did the study uncover in terms of why they're failing? And again, it's about the operationalization. That is the word of the technology. And one reason they found was that these efforts are undefined. It's kind of chasing the shiny object. Well, we need to do AI. Okay, well, what does that mean? Right. So, I think this ties into some leadership issues and other things. But Andy, what did the study find here?
Yeah, they said something. Basically, these are projects that are done on the side. In fact,
Right.
there's a great term they used, pilot purgatory. They said projects often stall because they're not designed to scale or they're not plugged into the actual systems where they can provide value. If you
Right.
start with a premise and
Mm.
say, okay, let's try this thing externally and see how it affects our existing idea, then that could be the problem. I'll give you an example. So
Yeah.
let's say that you want to use AI to optimize your pricing. Well, you could go with your existing pricing metaphor and use AI just to kind of benchmark it after the fact. And then you could declare, oh, well, it didn't really help us out. Well, what's the
Hmm.
problem with this experiment? The problem with the experiment is that you should be using AI at the beginning of the process, not the end of the process. So if you haven't defined how you're going to use it in the test, you may say, we tested that, it didn't work. Yeah,
Yep.
because you didn't actually change the metaphor. So
Mm.
this is where these projects are undefined fail because they haven't really thought through where AI can make its, biggest impact. And in this example I gave, I got AI at the beginning to help me do the pricing than just to benchmark it or check it out.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. So another reason they found is that the projects are unfocused. What was that about? Why did they attribute that to failure?
Well, it's a bit related to the undefined category,
Right.
but they're all over the place. So the other mistake you make, and in fact, I had a conversation with somebody recently about this very issue. He said they tried some AI projects and they failed for them initially because they were too broad.
Mm.
And what happens with AI is when it's changing business processes, what ends up happening is that you start to implement the AI like step one. And what happens is it's not linear. It maybe uncovers in step one three other things that you should
Right.
change. And then you have to stop and go, wait a minute, we have three other things that we have to change. And then you change those three things. And then there's three more things for each one of those things. And you have an exponential problem where you take step one and pretty soon you got 87 things that you've got to change because it's a systemic change to your workflows and your business processes. The
Hmm.
point here is you should be very focused on what you're doing. Take small tactical approaches. You want to
Yeah.
fix, a broken back end process. You want to fix the way in which you send out invoices. Do
Right.
that and use AI to target that. Because if you go with something like, we're going to use AI to change how we do finance in the organization, you'll never succeed because it'll uncover so many different areas where you have to fix things that you'll just stall.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we're deploying AI in our own business, Andy, and that's the key, right? Is focusing on, not that we're AI experts, we're learning like everyone else is, right? But one of the things we're learning is that to remain focused on that business solution, the specific. So we took kind of an idea, like in our business, AI can be used in many different places. But we focused in on one specific thing we're looking to do. You guys will hear about it later, what that is. But we have a very specific area that we're looking to solve for, and we are laser focused on that. What's fascinating about the process, Andy, is we're learning and we're seeing as we go through this process that we're surfacing some unexpected things. I mean, we couldn't have anticipated, just again remaining focused. And that focus helps us though keep a North Star, like, hey, we make some compromises along the way, right? As you're realizing. So yes, staying focused on a business problem is really key, I think. And we'll see how this all plays out over the next couple of months,
Well,
right?
I didn't think about that till you said it, but that's exactly correct. We've learned this ourselves. It's a highly iterative process. You
Yes.
discover things as you go along, and if you bite off more than you can chew, you'll choke.
Right. Exactly. But we are integrating our core systems, which in our case is our CRM systems, our forum and other things. So, we're doing it with the core in mind here, not sort of on an island so that it won't scale afterwards. Another issue that MIT highlighted in the failure is unmeasured. So I guess, people are rolling out these programs without having a clear way of measuring the impact they're having on the organization in the pilot phase. And so when you don't have anything that can measure, the CFO says, okay, well, what do you want to invest in? What? Why? Right? I mean, is that the point of what they're saying, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, it's back to the original point about being unfocused uh, unfocused and undefined.
Fine. Yep.
Is if you don't start with the metrics in mind, what are you aiming for exactly? And so again, if you just start a project and say, let's put AI, let's use AI for the supply chain to improve the supply chain. Well,
Right. Right.
how are you going to measure the difference? And if you don't, then as somebody famously said, if you aim for nothing, you're bound to hit it. And I think there are metrics that people are
Yeah.
using old metrics to measure new capabilities, and one big one is speed. I think there's a lot to be said for getting things done faster. But if the metric had nothing to do with speed, because speed was something you couldn't actually measure before, or here's a good one. I was talking to somebody the other day about this with customer service. In the age of AI, customer service is going to look radically different in the next couple of years. The reason why is because there was a reality imposed on call centers. It's called handle time. You can
Yes.
only have somebody on the phone for so long because
Right.
you're paying somebody by the hour. Well, if you're using AI, why not just have somebody talk to your AI rep forever? And in the process of that, they could stay on 24/7, 365, and even sell them stuff, right? Hey, Brian, what else are you struggling with? Oh, really? Tell me a little bit more about that. Well, we have a product that you would never have gotten there because you couldn't pay somebody to sit on a phone and go through all those questions. But with AI kids, so is the proper metric to measure AI handle time? No.
Living the dream, Andy. I want to talk to my cable CSR for the next 2 days straight.
But you see the point? In a world where there are real constraints around time,
No,
then
totally,
handle
man.
time is
Yeah.
the right metric. But in a world where there aren't constraints, then the real metric is probably how much incremental revenue do you generate. But you would never do that.
Right. So like and again, I'll tie it back to our own approach to using AI at our business at Master B2B. What did we say when we started? Okay, well, we want to solve for a specific thing that has to do with speed. And again, we'll reveal us as we get closer to having something in the actually available, what it's going to do. But I will say that we have a very specific set of metrics we're looking to impact when we roll that out. So yes, keeping your eye on that and narrowing the scope, because AI guys can do so much, and there's so many different places you could apply it. So so Andy, the article also talked about what successful implementations look like, and they talked about specifically these issues. Number one, targeted specific problems. Don't try to boil the ocean with your AI implementations. Look for something very specific you're looking to solve. Deep integration with your existing systems. Don't you want to get this to a point where you can roll it out reasonably, and looking at the integration is a key part of that, and then strategically integrating those things. I think all of these things are maybe overlooked with the hype, right? I mean, people, we just got to do something in AI. But what's your takeaway there, Andy?
Well, I think one big point here, there was another takeaway from this report, which is sort of buried, but I think is equally valuable to know, is that one of MIT's sharpest findings is that external partnerships reach deployment about twice as often, 67%, as opposed to internally built efforts.
Interesting.
Because internal teams don't know best practices. And it turns out expert advice pays off, especially when it comes to this. And what are the experts telling you? What you just put on the screen there, which is stay focused, don't drift,
right?
Stop once you figured something out, back up, rethink the process. You need guidance here, right? It also turns out that it was really the back office operations, not the flashy stuff, that was successful. So they said things like back office automation was one, fixing finance, supply chain. These are the ones that work, as opposed to, sadly, probably the front office stuff like personalization, the things that are sexy and cool. Those are less well defined, but specific tactical operational things are where these AI projects really shine.
And that's exactly where we've learned ourselves. Again, I use our personal experience with this, because every week you and I are working with a team, and we have an external team working, and the value they add is enormous. Because you and I we're not experts on AI, and this is a particularly important place to look for outside help, I think. So yeah, no, this is great stuff. And Andy, we wanted to know, so for our community, why do they think, like, what are the most resistant areas in an organization? You've got a lot of our listeners are at large companies, mid-sized to very large firms, that have multiple departments and functions and areas of their business. And where is the most sort of resistance to all this? Because we're talking about sort of change management and things of that nature here, in terms of how adoption and things. So we asked the question, which group in your organization is the most resistant to adopting AI? This is crazy. 60% said IT. 60%. Nobody said marketing. Only 20% said sales. Only 20% said customer service. You'd think, some of those folks would be worried about their jobs, but no. IT. What the heck? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think initially you and I both had the same reaction, which was, is this because they're afraid that AI is going to take their jobs? I mean, is this the cannibalization argument? But the more we looked into it, and after reading the MIT Media Lab report, it seems like at least it's theoretically possible that the reason why the IT group is more hesitant to engage in these projects is because they're the ones who have to do the back end integration part.
Yeah.
And that we know is where all the rubber meets the road. This is where the difficulties arise, because you can come up with a great idea, but we just spent 20 minutes talking about how you've got to operationalize it. Well, which group, especially if there's data involved, is going to have to operationalize this stuff? It's the IT group. Now, that's one possibility. It's also possible that IT just wants to say no to another project, which is what they love doing, right? So who knows?
But I also think there's some legitimate concerns at IT around information security, Andy. This AI world. I was on a call earlier today, and the fellow I was on the phone with, he said, "Can you turn your AI agent off? I don't want to feed in all our conversations to AI." Okay, think about that. All this stuff's being recorded by AI. Where's that going? We talk about proprietary things on our phone calls, right? In some cases,
concern I have with that is I had an insight a couple of years ago. I'm like, if you told people back in 1910, before the automobile existed, that we were going to have cars that could drive 50, 60, 70 miles an hour on narrow roads around people,
right?
The government never would have allowed that to happen. They would have said that's too dangerous, it's too risky, right? And so I think if this is the equivalent of, if you let IT tell you that there are governance issues, we have to be careful. Sure, we have speed limits, we have safety belts, but sometimes I think these IT groups take it too far. And they're like the people back in 1910 who would have said,
oh,
cars going 50, 60, well, people will be killed all over the place. Forget it. Let's ban them. And so you have to look at the upside. Thankfully that didn't happen, but there were enough people who pushed it through and said, well, imagine if we could move food across the country. Imagine if people could, get from point A to point B and be with family more often. There were good upside arguments. I think AI is similar. There are a lot of good upside arguments, but IT, again, it's part of their job. If they only focus on the downside risk, then it'll never happen. So anyway, there's probably a lot of reasons for this, but those are the ones that stand out.
Well, I'll talk to you when we're sitting in the Matrix, Andy. Okay, let's go. Let's go. A couple of announcements. We're past Friday 20 here. Folks, our Nexus service is your personal B2B digital lifeline. It provides expert advice exclusively for B2B e-commerce practitioners. Folks, this is a great service. It's paid service, but we match you with industry experts, as well as your peers, to answer your questions quickly, get you the right information and avoid mistakes, help you build your business case, pick the right technology solution, reduce your costs. And there's tremendous value in this service. We encourage you to check it out, masterb2b.com. Check out Nexus. We also have our forum, folks. If you're not a member of this, you need to be. Hundreds and hundreds of folks in here. They are talking every day about issues, hiring, solutions, etc. It is free. It is practitioner only. Sign up on our website at masterb2b.com. You see the forum link there. Take a look at that. You can apply today. And finally, I want to remind everyone that our Friday 15 is available in podcast form on your favorite podcast service, whether that's Google, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, our own website, anywhere you want to go. Listen to us while you're driving around or doing laundry. Anyway, folks, thanks. And please do also take a look at rating us. We appreciate your positive ratings. It really helps a lot. And thank you all for listening. Andy, any final words before we wrap our Friday 15?
Well, we're off next week, and I think then college football season's coming. Can you believe that?
I know, it's crazy. Around the corner. Go Scarlet Knights. Come on, guys. Get to 500 at least this year. It's going to be hard, man. We got like 5 ranked teams: Oregon, USC, Penn State, Ohio State.
It's really easy. You just have to get somebody who comes along with $1 billion, and you pay your players millions of dollars. They don't go to class, but they win games. That's the new model for college football.
That's sad. Sad but true. All right, folks, we will see you next week on our next Friday 15.